Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you haven't checked out my SEC record predictions, I hope you do. I made that yesterday, so go check it out. But today we are doing the Big Ten, in my opinion, the best conference in all of college football. We're gonna do obviously like we did with the SEC week by week predictions. And so let's get into it. Starting off, we'll do some of the easier ones oh, like yeah, like Western Illinois, Illinois is going to win that. Maryland will beat Florida Atlantic, so that could be an interesting game. Indiana should beat Old Dominion. As we scroll down, Penn State should beat Nevada. Oregon will beat Montana State. Iowa's going to beat Albany. USC should beat Missouri State. Um, yeah, so Ohio at Rutgers, new coach at Ohio. Um, But coming off a MAC championship, they played Rutgers in New Jersey, and then they come home and play West Virginia in week two. That's an interesting. Rutgers, I got winning that. Minnesota and Buffalo. I got the Golden Gophers winning that. Nebraska at Cincinnati, at Arrowhead Stadium where the Chiefs play. Dylan Raiola against, this is a very interesting game. I think the Cornhuskers win Miami of Ohio at Wisconsin. As much as I'm not high on Luke Fickell and the Badgers, I think they win this one. Western Michigan at Michigan State in state game. I got Jonathan Smith and Aiden Childs winning there. Texas at Ohio State, the big game in Columbus. I just, if you saw, I did pick Texas and I go more in depth, but I just trust, the Longhorns have more returning production. And, Julian Sayon was named yesterday, was named to be QB1, but I just trust Ohio State more, despite also having a new QB starting. Ball State at Purdue, Boilermakers should win. Northwestern going to Tulane. I'm not high on Northwestern, and I'm high on Tulane. Um, you'll see what happens in the Group of Five Championship on Friday when I make my full playoff predictions. New Mexico at Michigan, I got the Wolverines, and then Utah at UCLA, a Pac-12 um, rematch sort of. I got the Utes. I'm not high on the Bruins, and then Colorado State at Washington. I got the Huskies winning there. Moving on to week two. Northwestern should win. Um, Indiana should win. Penn State, Minnesota, Ohio State, Wisconsin should win. Purdue should win. Nebraska, USC, and Washington should win. Um, NIU at Maryland. We saw NIU last year pull off that huge upset over Notre Dame. Could they do it now? I could see it, but I think Maryland wins here. Illinois at Duke. I feel like a lot of people are high on Illinois because of what they won 10 games last year, because they were, you know, a real surprise. But I don't think a lot of people are giving any credit to the Blue Devils who won 9 games last year. I know they have a new quarterback in Darian Mensah, but I trust the Blue Devils, and I think they win this game. A lot of people are probably going to pick Illinois. Iowa at Iowa State for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. I know Iowa, new offense, bringing in Mark Gleninsky, I think is his name, from South Dakota State. I trust the Cyclones. I know they lost their top two receivers, but I believe Rocco Becht and that Cyclones team wins. Miami of Ohio at Rutgers. I think the Scarlet Knights against two MAC teams start 2-0. Oregon hosting Oklahoma State. This is an interesting game. Could we see the Cowboys pull off an upset? I don't think so. Oregon's just much too talented. Michigan State hosting Boston College this year. I think last year BC hosted. Um, I just trust Michigan State more. Michigan going to Oklahoma. I think this is going to be a rude awakening for Bryce Underwood. I think the Sooners, if you saw in the SEC video, I said Oklahoma wins, and yeah, I just think Bryce Underwood. Oklahoma's gonna have that defense come after him, and I just don't really see what's the word? I just don't really see Underwood early on in the season being able to propel Michigan, as I think as the season goes on, he's going to get better. UCLA at UNLV, and UNLV got a lot of former 4 and 5 star guys coming to join Dan Mullen. Could we see the Rebels pull off this win and drop the Bruins to 0-2? I could see it, but I think UCLA wins. Moving on to week 3, Indiana will move on to 3-0. Um, Maryland beats Towson. Nebraska will win. Michigan State, Penn State, Rutgers, Ohio State. Iowa wins. Um, Moving on, Northwest New Mexico, not Northwestern, New Mexico going to UCLA. I think the Bruins um, win that game. Yeah, they're not conference. Utah, UNLV could be some hard games, but I think at home and the Rose Bowl, I think they have to win. Oregon going to Northwestern. I just have more trust in the Ducks to win. Wisconsin going to Alabama. If they could have beat them at home, and I know Tyler Van Dyke got injured in that game, but they weren't winning anyway. I don't see any way they win this game. I picked Alabama, obviously, in my SEC video. Michigan beats Central Michigan. USC at Purdue. I trust the I trust the Trojans. I'm high on Lincoln Riley and USC this year. Purdue not so much. Western Michigan at Illinois. Um, I've got the Fighting Illini. Minnesota at Cal. Cross trip, road trip. Minnesota isn't, it's not like an East Coast or West Coast thing. And yeah, I think Minnesota. I'm not high on the Bears this year. Moving on to week 4, where the true slate, the Big Ten slate, but we do have some non-conference games. Oregon, I think, does beat Oregon State, though I think it'll be a much closer game with Malik Murphy and Beavers. Washington, I think, gets revenge on Washington State last year, and Notre Dame beats Purdue. Iowa going to Rutgers, an undefeated Rutgers team, taking on a 2-1 Iowa team. And I think Iowa pulls off the win. I just trust Iowa. I trust Kirk Ferentz and this Iowa team much more. Moving on, Illinois at Indiana. 2 teams last year surprise out of the Big Ten. Indiana 11 wins. Illinois 10. I trust Kurt Signetti, and Indiana goes to 4-0. Illinois, I'm not high on particularly that much this year. Moving on, Michigan State at USC. 2 teams I think could be surprise contenders. Just the way their schedules are, but I trust USC a lot more. Maryland at Wisconsin, 2 bottom feeders, and even though I'm a Maryland fan, I don't think they are particularly good this year. And I think at home, Wisconsin gets the win. Michigan at Nebraska. Dylan Raiola against Bryce Underwood. That should be a fantastic game. And I think Nebraska early on in the season playing really well. And like I said when I talked about the Oklahoma game, I think early on Bryce Underwood is going to have his struggles, which I think will lead to Michigan starting off not the greatest, but then overall finishing strong. Moving on, UCLA at Northwestern. 2 teams, kind of bottom of the conference. I'm going to go with Northwestern to win. USC at Illinois, undefeated, because I have USC starting undefeated, going 4-0, taking on a 2-2 Illinois team. I think Illinois gets this win, salvaging their season. Rutgers at Minnesota. I've got the Golden Gophers moving to 4-0. And this is a big one. Ohio State, Washington. Both teams 3-0. Um, you know, will this offense? Because in 2023, remember with Kyle McCord, the offense wasn't really the greatest outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. Um, and they kind of, thanks to a good running room and the defense, were able to win games. Could we see Washington at home um, be able to possibly pull the upset? I could see it, but I think the Buckeyes too talented, get the win. Indiana at Iowa. Could we see the Hoosiers once again start off 5-0? I could see it, but I think Iowa, with a much better defense, pulls off the win. Oregon at Penn State. The Ducks, rematch of Big Ten title game, and I think Penn State gets the win here. I think Dante Moore will have his struggles, but not being a full, like, he's already had a full year at UCLA being the starter, so he won't be as having much growing pains. But I think in this Oregon offense, it's going to take him some time to adjust. And I think Penn State, returning a lot of production, is going to get the win in that whiteout. UNL Monroe going to Northwestern. I got the Wildcats winning. Minnesota at Ohio State. Both teams, or no, Ohio State at 3-1, Minnesota at 4-0. So 4-0 Gophers team going to Columbus. I think Ohio State gets the win. Illinois at Purdue. We saw last year Purdue almost pulled off that upset. Could it happen? Possibly, but I think Illinois gets the win. Penn State at UCLA. Cross country trip. But we saw Penn State last year go to USC. Nearly lost, but pulled off the win. I think they do it against a lesser opponent. Wisconsin at Michigan. I got the Wolverines, a team I trust more. Washington at Maryland. Cross country trip. Washington coming off that loss to Ohio State. Maybe if they win that game, taking on a Maryland team, maybe we could see that pull off an upset, but I think Washington gets the win. Michigan State at Nebraska. Nebraska got 4-0. Michigan State must be down there 3-1. Two teams I'm high on, but I think Nebraska at home gets the win. Moving on to week 7, Rutgers at Washington. Last year, those two teams played on a Friday. It was a crazy game. When Washington gets the revenge and wins this one. Northwestern at Penn State. I got the Lions winning. Ohio State and Illinois. Another game. Ohio State on the road. Like Washington, could this be a loss potentially? It potentially could, if Ohio State, if the QB room isn't the greatest and the team, with a lot of young talent, maybe, they're starting to fluster, but I think they win here. Nebraska going to Maryland. Can Maryland pull off the upset? Hosting a 5-0 Nebraska team. I'm gonna say Maryland does pull off the upset. Last year they hosted USC when it wasn't undefeated, but they ended up coming back to win that game. Purdue at Minnesota. I think the Golden Gophers win. Indiana, Oregon. Two teams, with one loss. I think the Ducks at home take this one. Michigan going to USC. I got the Trojans, though, who nearly won last year at Ann Arbor, get their revenge against young, Bryce Underwood and Iowa at Wisconsin. This is an interesting one. Wisconsin 3-2, Iowa 4-1. Could this be a potential upset? It could be, but I think Iowa gets the win. And then UCLA going to Michigan State. I got Aiden Childs and the Michigan State Spartans winning. Moving on, Nebraska at Minnesota. We got the Golden Gophers. I'm high on Nebraska, but at the same time, I don't know how I can fully trust them, especially last year when they started off really well and then kind of fell apart at the end of the year. Michigan State at Indiana. I got the Hoosiers bouncing back with a win. Purdue at Northwestern. Two bottom feeders. I got the Wildcats winning. Oregon at Rutgers. So this being a potential upset, Rutgers. We saw last year Oregon when they went to Wisconsin, close game. Wisconsin almost won that game. So could we see the same thing? It's possible, but I trust Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Maryland going to UCLA. That's a loss, even though I'm not high on either team. Um, Washington going to Michigan. Could we see the Huskies win once again? It's possible, but I think the Wolverines. I think at home they get back. Ohio State at Wisconsin. Give me the Buckeyes. Penn State at Iowa. Penn State undefeated 6-0, taking on an Iowa team that at home maybe they think, oh, we could be this team that maybe upsets Penn State and puts them in the shot to make the college football playoff. But I take Nittany Lions, USC at Notre Dame, 5-1 USC, as you see, taking on probably an equally 5-1 Notre Dame team. I think they go 11-1, including a win here over the Trojans. UCLA at Indiana. I got Fernando Mendoza and the Hoosiers winning. Michigan State. I'm gonna take the Spartans. At home, a momentum, huge win here. Rutgers at Purdue. I could see Purdue winning this one. Both teams winless in conference play. I'm gonna say Purdue does win this game. Moving to 3-5. Northwestern going to Nebraska. I think Nebraska ends their two-game skid and wins. Wisconsin going to Oregon now. Got the Ducks. Illinois at Washington. Both teams with 2-2 in conference, so a huge matchup, and I think Washington wins. Minnesota at Iowa. I'm going to take the Hawkeyes to pull off the win. Week 10, Penn State and Ohio State. Is this the year James Franklin finally pulls off the win? I just don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't see it. And we'll get to rivalry week when Ohio State plays Michigan, and you'll see me kind of doing the same thing with that game. Until proven otherwise, gotta go with Ohio State. Rutgers at Illinois. Take the Fighting Illini. Purdue at Michigan. I'll take Wolverines. Indiana, who 6-2, taking on a 4-3 Maryland team. This could possibly be another upset? I'm tempted to go with the Terps. I'm gonna pick. This might be my bias towards Maryland, but I think they pull off the win. Michigan State and Minnesota. I'm gonna take the Golden Gophers and USC at Nebraska. 2-2 lost teams. I'm gonna say Nebraska pulls off the win. Northwestern at USC. I got the Trojans. Indiana at Penn State. Take Penn State to win that one. Remember who's just done a 6-4. Ohio State, I think, wins. I'm gonna say Maryland beats Rutgers to get to bowl eligibility at 6-3. Yeah. I'm gonna take Nebraska. Move to 8-2. Washington, and then I'm gonna take Oregon to win over those. Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota at Oregon. 8-1 Ducks. 7-2. Take them. Wisconsin, they're losing. Penn State at Michigan State. Could we see a potential, Aiden Childs upset win? And the Nittany Lions win. Michigan, I got over Northwestern. Ohio State, beating UCLA. Illinois gets back on track, knocking Maryland off. USC, I'm gonna say they beat Iowa. Washington beats Purdue. Week 13, Minnesota at Northwestern. 7-3. Could this be a possible upset? I could see it, but I think high on Minnesota. Ohio State beats Rutgers. Penn State drops the Cornhuskers. Washington at UCLA, a Pac-12 game. Could we see the Bruins at home with it? I got Washington, Michigan at Maryland. The last time these two played at College Park, it was a close game. And I'm gonna say Maryland wins. Say they get to 7-4. Oregon beats USC in another Pac-12 matchup. Illinois beats Wisconsin, and then Iowa beats Michigan State. Iowa going to Nebraska. We said win, traveling 8-4. Indiana. What about 7-4? Say Indiana wins. Maryland at Michigan State. I'm gonna say the Spartans at home take it. Penn State over Rutgers. Illinois over Northwestern Minnesota. USC, Washington, and then Ohio State. I'm gonna have them lose to Michigan. I know, crazy. But yeah, those are my Big Ten picks. Ohio State still somehow finishes first in these odds, even though losing 2 games but one in conference. Penn State, if they beat Ohio State, which I could see, 12-0 isn't unrealistic in a Big 12 championship. Oregon, 10-2, losses to Washington and Penn State. I could see them winning those games. I could see them losing to Iowa. Washington, I'm high on the Huskies a lot. I think they could be kind of like what Indiana was last year, a surprise team that makes a leap. And I mean that Ohio State game could be a win. Now I'm saying that Illinois 8-4. Yeah, I think that Duke game. They could possibly win either of these games against Duke and Indiana, USC. Ohio State, Washington. But I just think people are overrating them. USC 8-4. Yeah, early easy wins, 4-0, and then some late scratches. But I think they'll be much improved. Iowa, yeah, 8-4 as well. Penn State and Oregon, those could be wins at home. What's that Oregon game? Minnesota 9-3. Yeah, that Ohio State game in Week 6 on October 4th. That'll be a very, very interesting one. That Iowa game, Oregon game as well. Nebraska 8-4. Yeah, I have them starting pretty good, and then some bang up losses, and then I could see them beating Iowa maybe 9-3, beating Maryland 10-2. Speaking of Maryland, I did not think I was going to have them winning any Big Ten games, but I could see them winning some of these games. I mean, Washington, that could be an upset win. Beating Michigan State, that could be a win. Michigan 7-5. Decent year. I think Bryce Underwood early on is going to struggle, adapting to the college game. And there's a lot of pressure on him being this #1 recruit, this top 5-star guy. I think he's going to struggle early on, but then as the season goes along, it's going to look much better. Indiana 8-4. Yeah, I think 4 losses is the minimum. Whoever it is to. I could see them going 10-2, maybe an upset win over an Oregon or Penn State. but we'll see. Yeah, 6-6 for Michigan State. Um, decent year, bowl eligible this year. Um, it's just I don't really see many like dominating wins. Northwestern, yeah, I'm not high on the Wildcats. The two conference wins, decent. UCLA, 3-9, yeah. Brutal season for the um Bruins, same with Wisconsin. Just not high. I could see Maryland winning that game. Purdue, yeah, two early wins and then an offset win over Rutgers. And speaking of Rutgers, I got them going 0-9 in conference play. I could see it happening. Um, I mean, we saw Oklahoma State last year, 3-0 start, and then couldn't win a conference game. Um, but let me know down in the comments if you guys like these videos, if you want to see different stuff. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll be doing the ACC tomorrow, and hope you guys subscribe, like, comment, and bye.